gifts of time and treasure that you give this congregation, with sincere gratitude, we thank you. Your reading today is edited from Genesis. We've read from the Bible like twice this month. This is the story of Noah. Noah was a good man, a man of integrity in his community. Noah walked with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. As far as God was concerned, the earth had become a sewer. There was violence everywhere. God took one look and saw how bad it was, everyone corrupt and corrupting, life itself corrupt to the core. God said to Noah, "It is all over. It's the end of the human race. Make rooms. The violence is everywhere. I'm making a clean sweep. Build yourself a ship from teak wood. Make rooms in it. Coat it with pitch inside and out. Make it 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Build a roof for it and put in a window 18 inches from the top. Put in a door on the side of the ship and make 3 decks, lower, middle, and upper. I'm going to bring a flood on the earth that will destroy everything alive under heaven, total destruction. But I'm going to establish a covenant with you. You'll board the ship, and your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives will come on board with you. You are also to take 2 of each living creature, a male and female, on board the ship to preserve their lives with you. 2 of every species of bird, mammal, and reptile. 2 of everything, so as to preserve their lives along with yours. Also get all the food you'll need and store it up for you and them. Noah did everything God commanded him to do. I welcome today Dr. Everett Hamner, Professor of English and Quad City English Coordinator from WIU. Everett earned his PhD at the University of Iowa after a master's degree from Johns Hopkins and Regent College in Vancouver. He has published a number of essays and monographs. His class titles sound intriguing, including Introduction to U.S. Literature, Dystopia, Apocalyptic Horror, and Gender. I first heard Everett speak at a Green Drinks event, a Progressive Action for the Common Good event, and learned of yet another example of how science and art intersect. He uses literature and environmental science to provoke critical thinking in his students, and I feel confident that he will do the same with us today. Welcome, Everett.
Thank you much, Lori, and thank you all for the invitation to be here. It's an honor to get to talk to you today in a beautiful space. The setup is privileging me because I get to look at the trees behind you. It doesn't feel like the right setting to be talking about despair. It feels like a space of wonder and joy and peace. And yet, we need to be able to do that sometimes in spaces that are calmer and not just the ones where we're dealing with really difficult stuff. So, here goes. Once upon a time, about 40 years ago, a 7th grade kid in New York wrote an adaptation of the story you just heard from Genesis. It went like this, and I've got a picture of it showing up here that you will not be able to read from there, but I'll read it to you. It's called The Dove, and this was on January 13th, 1982. Evil was in the world. The laughing crowd left the foolish man and his ark filled with animals when the rain began to fall. It was hopeless. The man could not take the evil crowd with him, but he was allowed to bring his good family. The rain continued through the night, and the cries of screaming men filled the air. The ark was afloat. Until the dove returned with a leaf, evil still existed. When the rainbow reached throughout the sky, the humble man and his family knew what it meant. The animals ran and flew freely with their newborn. The fog rose and the sun shone. Peace was in the air, and it soon appeared in all of man's heart. He knew evil could not be kept away, for evil and war could not be destroyed, but neither was it possible to destroy peace. Evil is hard to end. And peace is hard to begin. But the rainbow and the dove will always live within every man's heart. So I don't know how that compares to middle school essays that you read or maybe wrote yourself. It's pretty idealistic. It's a rushing forward to its conclusion because it's easier to emphasize goodness and rainbows than to seriously meditate on suffering. The weeks of uncertainty that people experience when they've lost their homes to flooding, as they wonder about survivors and wait for the mud to dry out, those are hard things to talk about. But there are some emerging signs of wisdom in this seventh grader's work. Evil is hard to end. Indeed, peace is hard to begin. That's not a bad insight for a seventh grader. I've long been interested in textual interpretation, like what this young man was attempting here, and the ways that our stories mutate across time and cultures, just like viruses do. So I wrote a book about how the stories we tell about genetic testing and genetic engineering in our culture have evolved over time, across centuries even. As Charles Darwin once said, natural selection can be a beautiful form of creation. The earth is alive, and whether or not you credit that to a creator, we can all benefit from thinking about our creation, our planet's creation, as ongoing. And that's true of artistic creation too. New voices, new contexts emerge gradually with fresh connotations. Art grows from art. So today, I want to share about how this contemporary science fiction film grew out of an ancient Near Eastern text. Go ahead with that next slide, please. And I've picked a movie here that is a bit underrated. It's also not an all-time classic. You won't offend me if you think it's not the greatest thing ever, don't worry. I'm doing this because I do think there's something that Noah, this film, illustrates about how people's attitudes towards our climate crisis get shaped a long way away from the official statistics, sometimes unconsciously. So take a look at a trailer here and see what you think.
This world is filled with violence. So we must be destroyed.
They promise you'll the best of all the innocent. There's nothing for you. You stand alone and find me. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. In your hands now. When they come, they'll be desperate. They'll be many. It begins.
The tagline there interspersed was, "The end of our world is just the beginning," which may sound like a clever paradox, and I want to suggest it's more than that. We're a little ahead here if you want to back up a second. No matter what you think about talking rock giants, and even if you can't swallow a white Australian actor speaking English as a biblical patriarch, this film engages our climate crisis by reclaiming mythological ground that I think we really need. Go ahead. Religious fundamentalists and militant atheists alike tend to interpret this and other such stories very literally. But I'm instead suggesting an approach like that of biblical scholar Marcus Borg. There we go. Instead of naively treating stories, as number one has it here, as surveillance camera footage in the manner of fundamentalists, and instead of closing ourselves to wisdom that lies beyond data, like some militant atheists or hyper-rationalist types are tempted to do, instead, go ahead, I want to consider an approach to myth that's used by most serious biblical scholars and many indigenous people, and frankly, many people that have thought hard about what story is. And that goes something like this. Now, I don't know if it happened exactly this way, these people say, but there's something true here, and we need it. We need not just the facts about our situations, about things like a climate emergency that we all hear about various ways. We also need the emotional resonance of the stories we tell about those facts. So sometimes we tell stories with numbers in visual graphics like this one, if you'll pull it ahead. I don't know how well you can see that from your seat, but...
Not at all.
Yeah. Oh, boy. I hear you. I'll describe it quickly. There is a set of stripes with blue representing coolness and red representing heat. And each of those stripes is a year. As we move forward from left to right, from the 19th century to the midpoint in there nearly where it's pretty close to our present, 2020, and then toward the right side where it's showing 2100. There are 5 variations in the chart, depending on whether or not we as a species engage in very low, intermediate, high, or very high emissions. Very quickly here, if you imagine the Earth as a basketball and wrap it with saran wrap, that's our atmosphere. And we've been putting blankets on it. And we're thickening that atmosphere. And it's holding in more heat. And that's having big effects. And what you can see there, if you can see it, no worries, is that depending on when you were born, you will experience different degrees of this ongoing increase in the Earth's average temperature. Some of us here won't see a lot of this. Others will see an awful lot. But there's 5 different versions of the stripe that are important to keep in mind. And depending on what we do, we'll either be dealing with some amount of significant impacts or things that are really hard to imagine. I'm not going to belabor the data here, but I want you to see how we're telling these stories. This is from the IPCC report that scientists keep giving us. And it is trying to get our attention. It's telling us that even as we have double whammy hurricanes that hit people like my cousin in Tampa Bay in recent weeks, that more of that's ahead, that here in the Midwest, we have more periods of heat in the fall and weird polar vortexes in the spring. And yet, there's an awful lot we can do about this. These things are costly. If you want to just approach it just in terms of money, if you'll jump to our next slide, that's a representation moving from, I have to get closer here, just tell you here, from 1980 on the left all the way to our present. And The bottom is showing the number of billion-dollar cost natural disasters that our country has faced. The top is showing how much each one has cost. And as you move forward and as you get to the middle, at the 2000 mark, you see they start increasing. Essentially, short version of this, we're going from roughly 5, maximum 10 of these per year in the United States before the 21st century to 10 to 25 of them per year this century. And it has big, big impacts in terms of our country's trajectory and those of other countries around the world too, because of course, storms and weather don't care where our natural borders are, our national borders are. We need to tell this kind of numeric story, but it's not what I'm here for today. I want to talk about some word-driven stories like Noah, word and image-driven stories. If you'll go ahead, I want to share with you from a background of spending a lot of my time studying the stories we're telling with words and images about climate through literature and film and television and comics and video games. If you want some wisdom on climate, these are my recommendations, and it's going to come fast and furious here. There's a treasure trove awaiting you. There are relatively lengthy and serious novels, Pulitzer Prize winners like Richard Powers there. There are tremendous works of nonfiction like these. I especially recommend What If We Get It Right, which just came out a few weeks ago and really focuses on what we can do right now, solutions-wise, with our current technology. There are blockbuster films like we're talking about today. There are independent films that you're going to be finding more in art cinema spaces. There are streaming television series on HBO. There are works of comics journalism about indigenous peoples' experiences of oil prospecting. There are works of young adult fiction. There are video games. And I could keep going here. If you love romance fiction, if that's a kind of secret indulgence, let me know quietly later and I'll tell you the title of a romance novel that deals with climate, okay? These are tools for getting our heads and our hearts around the numbers. Taken together, they show we need very much to pay attention to our own and other people's emotional responses when we hear about the beauty out there being desecrated. I want to warn you against two main pitfalls today. I'm going to focus on one of them. One, I call cruel hope. This is what greenwashing does. It tells us it's fine. We have a plan for net zero by the year 2050, right? That's not close to good enough. People will tell us, just be hopeful and everything will be fine. And unfortunately, they're making a lot of money in the process and using us. On the flip side, and this is where I'm going to focus today, there's cruel despair. And this happens when people look in the face of all these facts and basically say, we're done. I give up. And in some ways, that's the story of Noah. So go ahead, if you would. On its surface, this story is talking about a very far from ideal scenario. Right? After all, this is an enormous planet-wide ecological disaster survived only by a fortunate few. And I'll say here that that idea is becoming too accepted. This assumption that the uber wealthy should be able to and can just shelter themselves from consequences that the rest of us face. Netflix had a movie called Don't Look Up not long ago, and it was all about an asteroid hitting the Earth, but it was also about us right now and what's going on with our climate. It shows the billionaires doing their damnedest and then jumping on a getaway ship. And we hear this story all the time. Wall Street executives enjoy their con game for a period, then they file bankruptcy, and yet somehow, as they leave, still get millions in severance pay. Oil companies pay only the smallest of penalties for enormous environmental devastation caused by spills and emissions. Our politicians accept huge donations from undisclosed sources, even non-domestic ones, and then give special favors after their election. In short, what Genesis once presented as a story of God's determination to save a remnant of humanity and start fresh, keep working with the basic goodness of creation, has become perversely opposite in its meaning. It's become a template from the most powerful people to escape consequences, functioning as vampires. It's Halloween, right? Until the system can't give another drop of blood. So, as we're going to see in this next clip, Aronofsky's contemporary version of Noah is not happy about this pattern. Integrating Genesis's first origin story with contemporary astrophysical and biological knowledge, the film gives us a Noah mired in disgust with humanity, a Noah who epitomizes what I'm calling cruel despair. Go ahead, please.
Soon everything we knew will be gone. All that is left of creation will lie within these walls. Outside, just the waters of chaos again. You're angry. You judge me. Let me tell you a story. The first story my father told me, and the first story that I told each of you. In the beginning, there was nothing. Nothing but the silence of an infinite darkness. But the breath of the Creator fluttered against the face of the void, whispering, "Let there be light." And light was. And it was good. The first day. And then the formless light began to take on substance and shape. The second day. And our world was born. Our beautiful, fragile home. And a great warming light nurtured its days. And a lesser light ruled the nights. And there was evening and morning. Another day. And the waters of the world gathered together. And in their midst emerged dry land. Another day passed. And the ground put forth the growing things, a thick blanket of green stretching across all creation. And the waters, too, teemed with life. Great creatures of the deep that are no more. Vast multitudes of fish, some of which may still swim beneath these seas. And soon, the sky was streaming with birds. And there was evening, and there was morning, a fifth day. Now the whole world was full of living beings. Everything that creeps, everything that crawls, and every beast that walks upon the ground. And it was good. It was all good. There was light and air and water and soil, all clean and unspoiled. Your plants and fish and fowl and beast, each after their own kind, all part of the greater whole, all in their place, and all was in balance. It was paradise, the jewel in the Creator's palm. And the Creator made man, and by his side woman, father and mother of us all. He gave them a choice. Follow the temptation of darkness, or hold on to the blessing of light. They ate from the forbidden fruit. Their innocence is extinguished. And so for the 10 generations since Adam, sin has walked within us. Brother against brother. Nation against nation. Man against creation. We murdered each other. We broke the world. We did this. Man did this. Everything that was beautiful, everything that was good, we shattered. Now, it begins again. Air, water, earth, plant, fish, bird, and beast. Paradise returns. But this time there will be no men. If we were to enter the garden again, it would only be to destroy it once more. No. The Creator has judged us. Mankind must end. Shemanila, you will bury your mother and I. Ham, we'll bury them. Japheth will lay you to rest. You, Japheth, you will be the last man. And in time, you too will return to the dust. Creation will be left alone, safe and beautiful. I'm very sorry about that girl. And I'm sorry for you. But we have been entrusted with a task much greater than our own desires.
What if instead we stewarded it? What I hope you recognize is how this rather non-heroic Noah does not seek to act with God, but for God, because he's just done with other human beings. The film reimagines him as a stand-up for anyone facing an apocalyptic moment. And I want to suggest to you that we are. But it's a slow apocalypse, where we recover the real meaning of the term, the original meaning, because apocalypse never actually meant the end of the world in an absolute sense. It always meant turbulent times of major transition. It's really dangerous to miss that, because if you think we're just doomed to the end with the climate despairers, you won't do anything more than the people who think everything's just fine, the endlessly, vapidly hopeful. You will do nothing. Aronofsky's Noah looks in the face of warnings from the future, like our climate scientists provide, and this Noah makes the mistake at first of the despairers. He's judged humanity and decided we won't change. We're a curse on the planet. His sin is despair, but deep down, it's an excuse to ignore others' suffering. So this is what the film's disturbing climax attacks most powerfully. It declares that to finally choose the way of cruel despair, to decide that sacrificing future generations is fine, is not okay. Even after the flood has done its worst, this filmic Noah thinks it's his job to rid the world of humanity, even if it means his grandbabies. Go ahead, last clip here, please.
I will not be stopped.
I know I cannot stop you from that crying. Please don't let them die crying. Your Father waits for thee to wrap you in his shouts and things, to whisper thee to sleep, to wrap you in his welcoming arms, till the night sky breaks. Your Father is the healing wind that whispers you to sleep, that whispers as you sleep.
You do not need to see this.
I will hold them. Do it quickly. Do it quickly!
I cannot do this.
Is that to slay our own demons is what's so crucial here. We have to realize we're not as alone as the propaganda can make us feel. This graphic, though you probably won't be able to read it either, once you see it, is an invitation to realize that we are far less alone than we tend to think. Across the aisle politically, Americans want urgent climate action. They want clean energy. They want to make this world a better place for future generations. And there actually is no completely good crowd or evil family like in Darren Aronofsky's childhood retelling of Noah, if you will pull that back up. What I read to you at the beginning today is what he wrote for his 7th grade class about the biblical story of Noah. If you'll advance the slide there. Yeah. And what I just showed you in this film is a much more mature, nuanced version. It reaches beyond a simplistic good versus evil binary and points out that we've all got both. We're all capable of being stewards of earthly beauty. We're all capable of participating in destruction. And in fact, we all do some of both. So my encouragement to you today, in short, if you'll put it on the last slide here, is simply to realize how many other people, not just the ones around you here today, but many out there, want a livable human future, and to immerse yourself in stories that enable that. Let's figure out how we can build it. Even if there's no complete purity to be had, no place free of complicity, let's still fight to make things better. Thank you all for having me and listening.
Thank you again, Everett. That was very moving. And now, please rise in body or spirit for our closing song in our blue hymnal 1064, Blue Boat Home. Also, lyrics on the screen. And now we extinguish our chalice. This is from 507 in the gray hymnal, if you'd like to read along. Grant us the ability to find joy and strength, not in the strident call to arms, but in stretching out our arms to grasp
our fellow creatures in the striving of justice and truth.
Thank you for coming today and participating in deep listening about the plight of our planet and how this is not a new struggle, but a very old one. I will now read another Wendell Berry poem, The Wisdom to Survive, which is 465 in your hymnal, if you want to read that. If we have the wisdom to survive, to stand like slow-growing trees on a ruined place, renewing, enriching it, if we will make our seasons welcome here, asking not too much of earth or heaven, then a long time after we are dead, the lives our lives prepare will live here, their houses strongly placed upon the valley sides, fields and gardens rich in the windows. The river will run clear as we never know it, and over it birdsong like a canopy. On the levels of the hills will be green meadows, stock bells in noon shade. On the steeps, where greed and ignorance cut down the old forest, a new old forest will stand, its rich leaf fall drifting on its roots. The veins of forgotten springs will have opened. Families will be singing in the fields. In their voices, they will hear a music risen out of the ground. They will take nothing from the ground. They will not return, whatever the grief at parting. Memory native to this valley will spread like a grove, and memory will grow into legend, and legend into song, song into sacrament. The abundance of this place, the songs of its people and its birds will be health and wisdom, and indwelling light. There is no personal dream. Its hardship is its possibility. Go in peace.
There were a couple slides where I showed
Question for you, kids. Did they actually do a backwards section?
I did mention it.